I think that I am an example of, a successful result of modern Western education.
Okay.
Because Western education seeks to develop skills of critical thinking and scientific thinking through a bachelor's program of a mixed educational spectrum of liberal arts and humanities and arts and visual arts. Even if whatever degree that you're taking, the first 2 years have all these mix of education, which most students complain about.
Yeah.
But that's this, and I complained about as one of those
Did you?
students. But then
So did
it
I.
was the reason for
Yeah.
my what I consider my enlightenment. Otherwise I would have stayed in the box or bubble that I've was grew up
Can
in.
I ask where that happened? The engineering years, where was it that you were doing it?
Well, no, I did the engineering years in the United States. I
Okay.
studied in several universities, several scholarships at computer engineering, electrical engineering, and then the graduate studies in the software engineering. I did also a minor in English literature, and I had an associate's in fine arts. And I think this mix of education, it has shaped my thinking in a way that have helped me understand the Islamic studies in a different way. And then it also uh, you know equipped me with the tools to actually exit the dogmatic way of understanding religion into a more reform way, and eventually into a humanism, exiting the realm of religion altogether into a wider circle and understanding of a humanity through the lenses of a humanism.
All right. Hello, Wissam. Uh, Charafeddine. Am I saying that right?
Yes.
Yeah. Religious honor, medallion of religious honor, something like that. That's what your name means. That's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. Too much responsibility.
Is it?
Its Arabic names gives a lot of meaning.
Yeah.
That sometimes it comes with seriousness.
My name has some too, but we're not going to talk about that. So we're here today to talk about Israel Palestine. But before we do that, I want to tell people, what your perspective is, your background, separate from Israel Palestine, and then we will get into that. I think that makes a lot of sense for people and for me at least. So American and Lebanese citizenship. But you've been in other places, like you've been in Canada also. But what other places have you lived at for longer periods of time?
I was born in the United Arab Emirates,
Yeah.
and I lived there most of my childhood,
Oh, okay.
and then lived in Lebanon. Then was a refugee in Canada, and then ended up at the United States through naturalization through my grandmother. My family, through my maternal grandmother, has been in Michigan since 1894. One of the very old families in Michigan.
Wow.
And actually, my great grandfather is a World War I veteran in the American Army.
Okay.
So we ended up coming to our second natural home. So we've been expats all our lives, living in UAE as Lebanese expats.
Oh, I see.
And then we tried to go back to Lebanon, which is our first home, but that didn't work because of the war. So we ended up going to our what we consider second home, which is Michigan.
Wow. Okay. You speak English, French, and Arabic.
Yes, although
Fluent in all three.
I've lost most of the French for now.
Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Okay. And you got the French because of the history in Lebanon. That's like a main language over there, right?
Right. My parents have been French educated, but then I also studied French myself later on, and I've been going to France regularly. Although there is a community of English-speaking American expats in France, which made me really less inclined to learning French, because after learning French for 4 years and going to France, you realize, like Woody Allen said, those damn French people don't speak French.
What are they speaking then?
So he's speaking from an American perspective, that after learning French and going there, the French that we learned, all of a sudden you're not understanding what they're saying.
Slang is very different than the book language.
Right, and they're not
So the
understanding.
same thing with Arab, with Arabic.
Sorry?
It's the same thing with Arabic.
100%, yes.
So my first couple of years of my life was just Arabic because of my parents, but I lived in the US, and then I forgot Arabic for various reasons, and then I learned it reading and writing from my grandfather 10 years old. Then I forgot it again. So maybe I'm like first grade level, but I still have, the lahja and all that, but it's kind of like a fraud. During your time in the US, and I don't want to get into detail yet, I'm gonna go kind of in backwards order. You were a community leader in Detroit, Michigan, not in politics, but a community leader.
Yeah, I don't know who would give me this label. I mean, I'm definitely a community activist.
Okay.
The word leader is something.
Okay,
really,
leaders maybe the wrong term, or
yeah, it's not something really that is effective or that we can label ourselves with, nor that I seek. Really, what I find myself being is, I find myself involved emotionally, and I feel a sense of responsibility to my community. I feel engaged. Some people don't. I do feel that. I can't help it. Sometimes it is a burden, but I have that feeling. So when I always feel myself that I want to contribute to my community, I want to engage it, and that's led me to become sort of an activist.
Okay, I want to talk about your activities there later. But so when you were in Lebanon, you were politically active in the sense that you took voting very seriously. I want to say a few things that I learned about you and your thing there. You wanted a statement of values from any party that you were going to vote for. None of them had such a thing. That's very interesting. I never thought about that. Coming from an American perspective, that seems kind of normal to have a document, like the U.S. Constitution kind of thing. Let's see. By the way, side point, my organization, Uniting the Cults, I want a constitution also. I kind of have something that I could reorganize into one. It's an essay from 3 years ago. But anyway, so I'm along the same lines as you when it comes to that.
Mm-hmm.
You have a religious history, Sunni and Shia schools of thought. Like you were studying in both. I don't know if you guys over there call it schools of thought. That's like an American term.
Yes.
And you were very religious. And the thing that you said that sort of tells people you're religious among people who are religious is you did the extra prayers, night prayers or something. Probably more than that too, I guess. But that's a lot more religious than a lot of other people. Definitely a lot more than me when I was. I guess I was never religious like that. And you say you were very spiritual too. That's an interesting thing. A lot of people don't even know what that is. You know what I mean? Like, have you met people like that don't even know what it is?
Probably, yeah.
You have? Okay, well, I was one. I've since learned what it is. When you were in Canada, and I don't know if I'm saying the timeline right, you were part of a reform movement for Islam. And I might be butchering words that you would prefer.
No, I mean, to summarize the background, basically, that when I was back in as a teenager in the United Arab Emirates, I joined an Islamic institute that was accredited from Al-Azhar University, and I did my share of learning of Sharia studies Islamic studies according to the Hanbali school of thought, in terms of fiqh, in terms of jurisprudence, and to the school of Ash'ari in terms of theology. And I got my licence, I think it's corresponding to associate degree kind of thing, from what was accredited from Al-Azhar University. That school, by the way, no longer exists, and it was a school that dated back to the Ottoman time.
Oh, wow.
And then when I went to Lebanon, because I have a Shia background in terms of my family is a known family as a Shia family. We Charafeddine are a family of religious scholars that descend from the family of the Prophet. A branch of our family is the Sadr family. So Sadr family is very well known. A lot of scholars from it. Today there is a whole movement in Iraq that is controlled by one of my cousins, Sayyid Muqtada Sadr. So the family is known for its religious affiliation or inclination, and that I had that interest when I was young. Although my immediate family was liberal, really, it was not really a religious family, but I kind of leaned towards religion. I studied Hawza, which is the term given to the Shia traditional classical university, Islamic school. And I continued when I immigrated to Canada. I continued studying through local scholars, and then in America, I studied through a university, Hawza, that had distance study program from Qum. Qum was the capital of the Shia school of thought. After Najaf, during Saddam's time, Najaf has declined, so Qum took over the leadership and all the universities and studying. It was basically centralized. It's like the Vatican of the Shia. So I was studying distance studies through that. So during my presence in the United States and studying, I was also religiously involved in da'wah, in religious work, both with the Sunnis and the Shias. I was kind of a uniting figure who did not see, worked across the differences. So I was both active in Sunni mosques and in Shia mosques. That, of course, brought me a lot of...
Simultaneously?
Simultaneously.
Wow.
And of course, that brings suspicion to you in both mosques. I suffered that. But anyway, and then at a higher level, so I got to a high levels of studying, which is called, Sutuh Ulya, then Bahth Kharij. This is the terms given to the stages of studying in the Hawza. When I got to high stages in studying, things did not add up. There were a discrepancy between the education and between the practice or even the doctrine of the religious institutions. So I started to clash with the religious institutions. I started to clash also with people, because people were, there were trends that were not consistent with Islamic education.
So you didn't really find anyone like on your side of things?
I did, and that's when we formed the reform movement called, under the name of Irshad, Institute for Religious Studies, Humanities and Dialogue, which came to an acronym Irshad, of course, picked very carefully, because Irshad was the name of the Husseiniya, of the Islamic center that Ali Shariati has formed in Iran, or was lecturing. He didn't form it. He was lecturing in Tehran during the Shah times. Okay. And during the Shah, some people think the Shah times were secular times. They weren't. They were actually times that the Shah, the regime, was allied with the Hawza. They were they were in peace and harmony. So if the Hawza didn't like someone, the Shah responded accordingly, and the Hawza, the Islamic institution, the Shia Islamic institution, was also in support of the Shah. So that's before the Islamic Revolution. Are you from Iran, by the way, Rami?
No, my parents are from Aleppo, Syria. Okay. And that's really close to Turkey. My dad's side is from Turkey. Mm-hmm. And actually, I wanted to say, you said your family that traces back to Muhammad, supposedly my mother's side traces back to Umar ibn Khattab.
Nice.
I don't know if it's true, but I can tell you why she believes it. But anyway,
what family is your mother is from?
The last name is Aqili.
Aqili. Yeah, the only reason I ask because Rustum is also a popular Persian name.
Yeah, and I was looking it up. I think it started in Persia.
Yeah. So anyway, Ali Shariati was a reformist in Iran. He was a sociologist, and he was lecturing in a religious institution called Irshad, and the authorities ended up shutting it down. And he was exiled, and he went to France, and he participated in the Algerian war against the French, and he was imprisoned, and then he was freed, and then a long history. And then he was assassinated in London, most probably by the Savak, by the Iranian secret service or intelligence service in the 60s. That's before Islamic Revolution. And he was then taken to Syria, was buried in Syria. His grave is still in Damascus till today. So because of we called it Irshad, like a continuation of Ali Shariati's movement and the people who are alike to Ali Shariati. Yeah,
you're trying to borrow a concept or a wave within a name of an idea. So let's see here. You have a school background of engineering, undergrad and graduate school level. So in my view, that's scientific thinking. I'm guessing you had it other places, but that's a place where you got some strong scientific thinking, learning how to do it, became practice. It entered in your mind and you started using that in other places, I'm guessing, right? Everywhere else in your life.
Correct. And it's unfortunate when that doesn't happen. So you expect, I think that I am an example of, a successful result of modern Western education, because Western education seeks to develop skills of critical thinking and scientific thinking through a bachelor's program of a mixed educational spectrum of liberal arts and humanities and arts and visual arts. Even if whatever degree that you're taking, the first 2 years have all these mix of education, which most students complain about.
Yeah,
but that's this, and I complained about as one of those students. But then it was the reason for what I consider my enlightenment. Otherwise I would have stayed in the box or bubble that I've grew up.
Can I ask where that happened? The engineering years, where was it that you were doing it?
Well, no, I did the engineering years in the United States. I studied in several universities, several scholarships at computer engineering, electrical engineering, and then the graduate studies in the software engineering. I did also a minor in English literature, and I had an associate's in fine arts. And I think this mix of education, it has shaped my thinking in a way that have helped me understand the Islamic studies in a different way. And then it also equipped me with the tools to actually exit the dogmatic way of understanding religion into a more reform way, and eventually into a humanism, exiting the realm of religion altogether into a wider circle and understanding of a humanity through the lenses of a humanism.
So that brings me to the next couple of things. You started an organization called Muslimish, and without getting into detail about that, what I want to do is, I found out that you already did an interview about this. I want to link that for people in the description. I'll ask you later for the link. In 2018, you did a talk on behalf of Muslimish about a universal declaration of values, and you played this video during that talk. Which, by the way, I was really amazed by the video. Not just the videography, but the ideas that are in there. You can tell it's a really good writer saying the ideas. It's not just It's not just great video graphics. And so in there, you also invited people to participate in making a document of universal, a universal statement of value. And this is like a worldwide thing. And it's a thing where I think I remember you said something like, well, in the video, the narrator of the video said, no country has enshrined these values as laws, and it needs to be that way. Somebody should do it. So that's what you're advocating, and you also invited people to help with it. I would like to help, and I'm sure some of the people listening to this would like to help. So if you can tell us a little bit about that, and then give us some links, we'll put it in the description.
Yeah, for sure. Every subject that you're mentioning, it can take an episode by itself.
Which I'd love to do, by the way. So I'm already asking for that.
So and first of all, I want to correct something. I am not the founder of Muslimish, co-founder. I'm one of the founders. Actually, Muslimish, the first person who created Muslimish, his name is Ibrahim Abdullah. Would be a great guest on your show. Okay. Ibrahim Abdullah is in New York. He's the founder of Muslimish. Then when I discovered Ibrahim and we became friends, I had experience previously in creating organizations while Muslimish was just a meetup in New York. So I told him, let's take this into an organization. And we did this in 2013. And Muslimish has been going since then. It's in 12 cities and many members, although many of us feel that its objectives have been met in majority, and that many people have moved on to various types of works. Which is interesting.
How do you feel? Do you think?
I feel it's partly true that the situation of questioning Islam has it was over censored, and that has become better and better as we progressed.
Do you mean just in North America or where?
I feel in most of the world. I mean, of course there are exceptions like Afghanistan or but I feel that there is progress in that direction. And while at that time, 2013, there were barely any outspoken ex-Muslims. There were like Ibn Warraq, there were Ayah Hirsi Ali, who was who was also not very much popular. Ayan Hirsi Ali. There was Ali Rizvi. Also was recent. That's before the publication of his book, The Atheist Muslim. So it was still a new phenomena, and it was not. There was a lot of pressure. I remember that number one concern for Muslimish circles were security. And Muslimish basically is an organization that creates a space for questioning. So instead of making the question about religion a taboo, like what happens in most mosques and in a lot of cultural, religious cultures, although I don't believe that Islam made questions as taboos, but that's what Muslims do. We celebrate questions, and that's why it is in the middle of our logo, a question mark and a crescent. So Muslimish basically embraces questioning. So there are people with various degrees of religiosity, as long as they embrace questioning, and there is no red lines, there is tolerance to blasphemy, there is tolerance for difference of opinion. It seeks to create a pluralistic society. So that's the objective of Muslimish. And I feel from 2013 till 2025, today, it is much more common to question religion. There are many platforms that do that, and many circles. And, we are in a new era where that is something that is common. I feel that the internet, like Maryam Namazi says, that the internet was a tool for enlightenment, just as printing press was a tool for enlightenment for Europe. So for the Muslim world, and the internet was a tool for enlightenment. So in that sense, I believe, yes, that Muslimish, the reason it was begotten in the beginning, it's less tense of a reasons. The reasons are less presence or prominent. But one of the goals of Muslims is to abolish blasphemy laws in the world, which is still a long way from there.
Long way.
And with the rise of the right in many countries, we might have a new struggle to fight for. Yeah. So
Okay.
going back to your 2017 lecture, which was in a Muslimish conference. Do you want me to talk about that? We'll
Yes,
take about
please.
5 minutes.
The universal Declaration of Values, what the purpose of it is in the first place, and maybe even a little bit of history if you want. I learned a lot of actually historical points from that video in the 2018 show. Things about Cyrus the Great. I mean, I know of the guy from video games and history in school, but I didn't know the basic concept that he freed slaves and was trying to expand human rights. I didn't know about these kind of things from these men.
Yeah, so I recently published a book, actually in 2023 in October.
Oh, okay.
Universal Declaration of Human Values. So the book was published, about 300 pages, where I explain in details, and I put references of all these documents I spoke about. So the idea of this Universal Declaration is two things, really. One is that we look at history and we see that successful movements always have attached itself to some kind of a sacred text or defining document. When movements connect to persons, it defines its end. Persons change, and they have longevity, and they have burnouts, and it's usually
rule of law versus rule of men.
Exactly. So the idea was born with me studying the American Revolution and the French Revolution, and both of them, their success is defined by the documents that define them. So a person can be popular or not, but like Thomas Paine is the founder of the American Revolution. He was then rejected by many American revolutionaries, not to my satisfaction. I love Thomas Paine, and I feel he's the most important American ever. But he was rejected. He died, unknown in Britain, and even the American government at a later stage fought Thomas Paine. He was persona non grata at a certain point, but that doesn't matter. The documents and the book he wrote, The Common Sense, and then the documents, which is the Declaration of Independence, and then the Constitution, influenced by his thoughts, and Benjamin Franklin and others, was the success of this country. Until today, it still defines the success of the American project, because whatever happens, people go back to the Constitution, and it kind of corrects the path and the separation.
From what I understand, it's the longest running living document. In the sense that we follow it, but we update it. I guess I don't know what else to compare it to. I don't know too much about what the French did. Well, I have a question for you, actually. The English also had a document. They of course were born a little bit differently or maybe a lot differently than the French and the US. The French and the US had a revolution. The English was more like the people kind of begged the king to give them more freedom, and then that's how it kind of evolved. But they do have a constitution, right? Is theirs problematic compared to the French and the US one?
If you're talking about modern ones, they kind of have the modern ones have converged into 90% similar ideals, but the original, like if you're talking about the Magna Carta or before, so the point, the French Revolution, the exact moment that inspired this thought for me is there is this painting by Louis David of the French Revolution, of the oath in the tennis field. So when the delegation went to meet in Versailles, and they, the king basically shut down the parliament and did not want to have any more of these meetings. They met anyway in the tennis court, and they had an oath, and they wrote the oath of a paper, and then Jacques Louis David have a picture, and it is the focal points. The center point is that document, while everyone else blurs away. And that kind of a moment that struck to me that it is the document is the most important thing. So if we have document, people can rally behind the document. People can find, how can they find their commonality with that document? Is it worth fighting for? So I tried to write a document that summarizes the movement, the progress of civilizations from the first writings of humanity, religious writings, like what's called holy books, is basically a human thought and heritage. From those thoughts all the way to the Magna Carta, all the way to the revolutions, then all the way to the modern documents. I even used some of the Islamic documents that are considered influential documents, like the Prophet's Muhammad's agreement when he entered Medina, to the letter of Imam Ali to Malik al-Ashtar when he ruled Egypt. He gave him a set of rules to rule Egypt with, to various documents, all the way to the Declaration of Human Rights, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and then to more modern documents, all the way to the Paris Accord. So the last document was the Paris Accord, which Trump, by the way, just withdrew from yesterday.
Oh, shit.
So, which the Paris Accord focuses on the environmental crisis. So I put all these documents together and summarized them in 20 relevant points today. And that is basically, and I've asked feedback from many people, many organizations, many thinkers, and I've edited it. Then it came to a final version, and then I started calling organizations to adopt this 20 values. So in case ever something happens that defies one of these values, they can say, 1 second, this thing, we cannot do it because it defies one of those values. This is something, when I was religiously practicing Islam, was very comfortable to us having such a document, which is the Quran, and going back to it. It kind of gave you the answer right away, and you didn't have to. Of course, that's being said easier than done. Because
can I give an example for everyone? A relevant example? Google's motto, or I don't know what you call it, that one sentence after their name, don't be evil. It used to be that. They've deleted it. It's now something else.
Yeah.
So that was their document. That was their constitution. Don't be evil. And they got rid of it. Because, like, you're right, the document matters.
Yeah.
You have to follow the document.
I didn't know that. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
So I started when I would join, when someone would ask me to join an organization, I would send them these 20 values and tell them, do you accept these values? If you do, I'll work with you. If you don't, I can't work with you. So there's some points that some people will not accept. The hardest one I had to work on was the animal rights one.
Okay.
Because the people who are vegan or vegetarian, due to ethics, they have a point. So I had to be very careful, because I wanted this to be something that's also acceptable to them. So it's kind of, I consider it like an agreement between vegetarians and non-vegetarians.
I wonder if you can have a multiple level membership. So you have like a gold membership, and that means you adopt all 20, and silver membership, you only adopt 18 of them. I don't know.
So I've written that one I think that one was the one I spent most time on to find common ground, and I think I did. I think it's acceptable as it is now by all parties. So so and some organizations adopted that, by the way.
And when you say organizations, are you talking about nonprofits, for-profits,
Yeah,
government
nonprofit.
entities? What do we mean?
Nonprofit organizations. Some
okay.
nonprofits adopted that. I was trying to get major sign-ups for this, but then, I've deserted that project since then, and just had it there because sometimes you do a project and then maybe another time will come where it is really needed. Ironically enough, and maybe that is a bridge to our main topic today, is that when I published this book, I published it on October 10, 2023.
Okay. And so the October 7th, 2023 was the event. So 3 days later.
So after 3 days and thousands of casualties, I had a signing event for it in Paris. American publishers were not very interested, but I find that my books in Europe are more accepted. So, and I was in Paris at that time, and I just didn't do the signing because it seemed that the world has resorted back to barbarism, while I was bringing this very hopeful thought that we have reached to this point and we should continue from that point on. How do we build on it, and celebrating the Enlightenment, celebrating all the Western accomplishments also in that sense, although I did not ignore the Eastern thought and philosophy and progress. Is all included in here, but the most recent writings are all European and Western. So I was celebrating that, and then came that setback where many of the Western countries have actually sacrificed, or they've let down their values because of these political. So it seemed ironic for me to speak about that book at that time, and I skipped the signing.
Well, I want to say, kind of off topic, I'm going to read your book. It seems very important, especially from everything I've already seen for this, watching your videos, and then everything you said now. And then I'd like to have you on again to talk about it directly. But I guess for now, it's good to talk about our main topic. Would you be okay if I put up some of your tweets and we discuss them, because they seem to be relevant?
Sure, but just to let you know, I am not as active on Twitter as I am on Facebook. I'm mostly active on Facebook. Probably Twitter is like 1%.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm on Facebook. I'm going to find you on Facebook and get you on there. I guess I haven't seen anything from there. So let's see. Okay. By the way, I watched somebody else put somebody's tweets up and then discuss them. Who's it? Abby Martin. I found it very interesting. So you say here, I'm not interested in talking about any terrorist before the international community deals with Israeli and White House terrorism. You're talking about the U.S., obviously, here.
Yes.
Can you say a little bit more about that before I start saying some comments? What did you mean here?
Yeah, so after the 200,000 plus casualties, death, of course, Israeli official stance is that that ratio is better than World War II. So you should thank Israel for not having millions of people killed, which is ridiculous in itself to compare anything to World War II.
Yeah. This isn't a world war. It's very different circumstances, but yeah, go on.
But even if you are going to compare to World War II, well, the amount of bombs that have been dropped on Gaza, which is 3 by 5 mile, is 3 times more than the power that has been dropped on Hiroshima. But since October 8, 2023, not to start history from there, but just to speak within the context. Israel has been practicing war crimes, has been practicing genocide, condemned by every legitimate international organization of human rights, from the ICC to the United Nations to the Amnesty International to Human Rights Watch, etc. And that continued to happen till today. As we speak, there are currently civilians still being killed in cold-bloodedness with the least respect for human life. And this is the first televised genocide in history. We had to suffer the trauma of watching it day by day. My concern was for my children, is how do I stop them from watching this? Because I don't know what kind of human beings will come out of this after they watch this, and this is normalized to them.
Wow.
The children, looking at their dead mother's eyes, and children calling 911 while their dead parents are in the car and then being shot at hundreds of bullets like Hind, and the thousands and thousands and thousands of stories, each of which is an epic story of a human suffering. And now we have this anthology of thousands of traumatic stories that are coming out to no end. Every one of them is a decrease in the humanity.
And really, these things have been happening for 75 years.
And these things, genocide has started for 100 years. And I remember when Ellen Pape, the Israeli historian, unfortunately, sometimes, I learned something in this last year, is that sometimes we, as Arab, we shy away. We try to be what do you call it? Like we are self-critiques and force ourselves to be from the fear of not being moderate or from the fear of being biased, because you're always portrayed as an extremist. So as a reaction to that, you try to compensate for that by pushing yourself further and being moderate and tolerant. And I've learned that so many things that I have lost track of in terms of what's right and what's justice, Israeli activists and historians and Jewish activists and historians have brought back the right perspective for me, like Ellen Pape and Finkelstein and amazing.
Abby Martin for me. Abby Martin,
I have a lot of respect for her. And I haven't prepared. I'm bad with names, and I haven't prepared myself for that. But many, many, many examples. Ellen Pape himself, and we brought him to Dearborn here through Al-Nadwa Free Thinking Society, an organization that I've co-founded. And of course, also that he was, another organization that participated in that program was the Jewish Voices for Peace. Jewish Voices for Peace themselves have been an inspiration for us. Anyway, so Ellen Pape, as an Israeli historian, I had to hear it from him. Why does he consider that ethnic cleansing has started 100 years ago? Because 100 years ago, you're talking about 1920s. And
28 years before the Israel.
Right. And he said that ethnic cleansing or genocide doesn't mean high number of casualties.
Right.
It is
logic.
Exactly. Yeah. It is an intent to ethnically cleanse people or to displace people based on their ethnicity. So
Israel had plans, or the people that eventually made Israel had plans for a demographic war as early as 1920, meaning they needed more Jews or / Israelis and less Palestinians, Arabs, and
Right, and that's the Zionist movement. And unfortunately, the Zionist movement have hijacked a lot of the Jewish voice, although not all of it. And that's
Okay.
what is keeps on being hidden by the American propaganda and the Zionist propaganda, is that Jewish is equal to Israeli. And the pro-Israel means Jewish, or Jewish is pro-Israel, and anti-Israel means anti-Jewish. While 40% and more of Jewish Americans are anti-Israel, and they're anti-APAC, and they're dissatisfied with their Israel's performance and record. And actually, after studying this last year, because before that I studied Zionism very well. I have a series in Arabic about the history of Zionism, and I am a member of the Congregation of a Humanistic Judaism. They are my brothers and sisters. And I've studied, there was a course about Zionism there, and I studied it. And I consider myself, I tell my friends that I was ignorant about Zionism before I took that course and before I did that studies, because we used to think that Zionism is a one thing, but the Zionism, there's about 37 different kinds of Zionism, and there's a complicated history of it. But last year, I've realized something new, that actually Zionism started as Christian, not even Jewish. Christian Zionism started, and the first conference was in Chicago in 1840, years before even Herzl was born. Zionism is rooted more with evangelical Christianity than with Judaism. It actually was forced into Jews.
So what I understood was atheists made Zionism. So if it's Christians that did it, were they talking with atheists to get it started, or?
So
when Jews is what I meant.
If you mean by Zionism the movement in which Herzl started, Theodor Herzl, is that?
Yeah, that guy. He was atheist Jew, right?
Yeah, he was an atheist Jew, and there's a lot to be said there. But Herzl, what Herzl wanted is basically he wanted to create a political entity to protect Jews. He was very pragmatic. Before that, by the way, Herzl had a project for the Christianization of Jews. He thought that the best way for Jews is to become cultural Christians. And he tried, and he created the day of baptism for all Jews in Vienna. Of course, Jews laughed at him, and that didn't work. It was a failed project, but it was a very aspirational project. It was a dream that he dreamt of, and he approached naively, because he was naive in a certain sense. And he's a playwright, he's a journalist. And after the Davos event in Paris, and he started writing these thoughts about the Arabs, the Jewish state, there was a certain point where he was, and that's in his diaries, where he was thinking, is this a real project, or maybe it is a nice play? Maybe I can make it into, like he was
really similar to how Scientology started.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of knowledge about that. Yeah, but it's interesting to know. Yeah, so he had doubts. He wasn't very sure about where he's going. But if you read The Jewish State, his book, and I've read it 3 times, and I have it on Kindle and in my house, it's one of the most read books by me. So the Jewish state, he is very pragmatic. First of all, he presents Argentine as the first option. And then he presents Palestine, since a lot of Jews, they're connected spiritually to Palestine. And there's already the Alai, and there's already a religious movement to move to Palestine. It's not associated with creating a political entity, but there was already a movement there. And and later on in 1904 or 3, in the 6th Zionist conference, he was offered Uganda as a place, and he presented it in the conference.
Okay.
That Palestine seems impossible. Can we switch it to Uganda? And he was faced with a very harsh reaction from the Jewish.
They didn't like it.
Zionist conference. They didn't like it. They considered a betrayal. They had very harsh words to tell him. He was almost kicked out from the Zionist conference that he founded.
Okay.
And he died a year after. And in his book, the Jewish State, Herzl only presents buying land. He says we keep buying land, and the land that they don't sell
With
us.
money from the Rothschilds, right?
Well, yeah, he didn't have the details at that time because the Jewish state was intended to be a letter, a proposal. It was made into a book, but he wrote it to be a proposal that he would send to create the Jewish company and the Rothschild, etc. So the Christian Zionism, evangelical Zionism, now we call it, because not all Christians they are with it. The Christian Zionism in Britain was ones that have pushed for, later on after Herzl's death, they pushed for this to become a project, and the Balfour Declaration 1914 or 1917.
So I did a couple podcasts with people about Israel Palestine. One of them was an Israeli former ordained rabbi. He told me about this story, and he said the reason the Christians or anyone in Europe who were not Jews, the reason they liked Zionism, their main motivation is get the Jews out of Europe, rather than give a nice home to Jews in Israel.
Well, the Christian Zionism, evangelical Zionism, believes that the second coming of Christ will only happen when all the Jews return back to the land of Israel.
So there's a theological underpinning, but I wonder if there's also just general racism. I mean, from what I understand, Christians were pretty racist against Jews in Europe during this period, or at least leading up to it.
Yeah, anti-Semitism was prominent in Europe at that time. It's a Western problem. We have nothing to do with it with the East. Arab Jews always existed among Arab Christians and Arab Muslims, and there was never an issue. I remember my ex-wife. She grew up in the Jewish Lebanese area in Beirut, and their neighbors, and there was no issue. But anyway, so the Christian Zionism has a theological motivation, but of course that also mixes up with some racism for some. Sure. They thought, okay, we'll hit two birds with one stone. There's different, motivations for different people. The Russian Tsar had a different, motivation. It was totally anti-Semitic motivation. Herzl himself, he says,
well, the Russians also in general, they just hate all religions, right? They want to be atheists.
Yeah, but that's before the Bolshevik Revolution. When he met with Herzl said, I felt so dirty leaving that meeting, because he was feeding the anti-Semitism of the Tsar, telling him that yes, Jews have they're the cause of all the problems. Then I have a solution for you to take them, to help us create a homeland for them.
Wow.
And that's something that Herzl felt very bad about, or felt like, unclean about. But he was pragmatic. He was a very successful, pragmatic person who has spent his life. For me, Herzl is an inspirational person in terms of a person spending all his life for a far-fetched dream. The Jews were totally anti-Zionists at that time. They were against Herzl's project. His first conference, 1897, it was supposed to be held in Germany because that's where most of the Jews are, and he couldn't even do it there because they would lobby the city to not to allow him to do it here. So he had to do it in Basel in Switzerland. There weren't much support from the Jewish communities for Herzl, not in Britain and not in Europe, the rest of Europe. But a lot of the youth, a lot of the secular movements, that's the time where the birth of nationalistic movements. So everyone was thinking this way. Even the Arabs had the Paris conference in 1913, where they said, okay, we want to be also autonomous and we want to break free from the Turkish rule.
I'd like to just say I replied to you here, by the way, and the thing I was saying was, I think people use generally the term terrorist. I think is a propaganda term, similar to like Islamophobia, and the reason people use it is because the typical reaction to hearing the word terrorist is, oh, well, that guy's a bad guy, and that's why we're doing it, and I don't have to think anymore about why he's doing what he's doing. And it's not much different than the way a lot of parents deal with their kids. If they see their kid do something that they don't understand and they think it's, weird or whatever, instead of trying to find out what it is that the kid is doing and why, they just say, oh, my kid's just 2 years old, or it's just a tantrum, or he's just stupid. It's a way to get people to cease thinking, like a thought terminating cliche, except it's just one word. And I think I don't know. I don't know how do you get around that. I don't know how you fix, with the Islamophobia term. I don't know who came up with this. Somebody in your circle came up with the idea of apostophobia as a sort of anti-propaganda against the propaganda term.
Right.
So I wonder if that could be done with the word terrorism. And I know there's freedom fighter.
Yeah, the word has totally been, the Western hypocrisy is no longer tolerated really after the Gaza genocide. And now, there's the West Bank genocide starting now. So we haven't seen the end of this. But, after terrorism, they define terrorism as systematic targeting of civilians to advance a political goal. And if what Israel is doing in Gaza is not terrorism, then there is no terrorism.
Then the word has no meaning. Yes.
Then the word has no meaning.
Similarly, you can have other cases to compare to, like the U.S. When they sort of was involved in generating the Mujahideen in 1980s in Afghanistan. They called them freedom fighters, but then as soon as alliances changed, now they're terrorists. But their ideology hasn't changed, their policies hadn't changed. It's the same people, same everything. That's how you know it's bullshit. And this has been repeated all over the place.
Right, and they failed. The West has failed in using that term, and they have failed in what is called the war on terror, which we've discovered all the lies and all the hypocrisy that was displayed through all these political moves using these words. Unfortunately, these words lost any meaning, and the Western hypocrisy has never been more clear and on display. But there is a positive side to that, is that the newer generation, they see it, and that's why there is a movement. There is the younger the persons are, the younger the persons are, the more inclined they are to see the hypocrisy. 68% of the Z generation, they are pro-Palestine. The word Palestine itself became a symbol for uncovering this Western hypocrisy, and they are after them. They are after it by, they're trying to ban TikTok. Today I heard that actually TikTok now has started censorship against
Free Palestine is banned.
Exactly. So we see it clearly. The whole thing was about Free Palestine. This whole TikTok ordeal was about Free Palestine. They're not even shy from making it that clear by what we saw today. And he had an executive order today against censorship. Palestine is an exception to that, and we're gonna continue seeing that hypocrisy, but we're gonna continue to fight it, and that's why I've joined the Green Party in the last elections, and we're gonna continue as the Green Movement, and the Democratic Party is dismantling, and the Green Party is rising. We got 29% of the Arab vote in Dearborn.
I think that's what this is related to. Yes, Green Party right here. So another tweet, you say, imperialism will continue to haunt us and make us hypocrites as we confront any savage expansionism in this world. End imperialism, honor Native Indian agreements, pay reparations for slavery, Green Party platform. Vote Dr. Jill Stein. Very interesting. Talk to me a little bit about, people who don't know a lot of history. I think they don't know basic stuff like I don't know a country or an entity that didn't do imperialism in its past. I don't know of one. Now that doesn't mean that it was all okay and we're all equal in our morality or whatever like that. But it also doesn't mean, if somebody was to say, there are people who say, let's reverse Israel-Palestine to what it was before Israel existed, 1948. If you use that kind of logic and then you apply it to Islam, if Islam and Arabs spread by violent, imperialism within what? So it's been about 1,300 years with its old. If you're going to use that logic, then how do we reverse everything to the way it was before Islam? Well, we can't. I agree with reparations. I agree with things like there's be some sort of right of return. Would you agree with that one?
Yeah, 100%. Of course, this is a very, very big topic, and there's a lot to be said here. And we have to also divide this topic into different stages because we have to judge things according to their context. So when the word was basically, if we talk about the post-civilized world, so let's talk about Roman Empire.
Geneva Conventions is the post, maybe? I don't know.
No, I'm talking Roman Empire and beyond.
Okay.
From the Roman Empire till the fall of empires. So the fall of empires, you can consider the fall of you can consider the French Revolution is the fall of the
last empire,
the last superpower of that time, before new superpowers emerged. So a superpower at that time was France, and it fell in 1789 in the French Revolution. Now, from the Roman Empire till that time, the world was basically empires, and people needed to be within an empire to be protected by that empire.
To be protected from other empires.
Be protected from other empires.
Yeah.
And one empire might bring you more justice than the other. One empire might subjugate you more than the other. You wake up in the morning and you don't know what's your luck. And whatever empire comes might impose a religion on you, so you adopt it, might impose a language, and you adopt it. الناس على دين ملوكها. People have the religion of their kings. That was the saying of that era. So it's Roman expansion, Persian expansion, and then when the Islamic Empire emerged, expansion. It's not by definition equal to the same meaning of imperialism that was born in the 19th century. It has a little bit different meaning.
Okay.
And I'm not saying that it is as a positive thing. It has to be judged each by case by case, because some of it was positive, some of it was negative, some of it brought better circumstances.
Well, similarly, dictatorship, the concept is bad, but theoretically, and I think this happened in history, you had a good dictator.
Well, also that term it has a time limit on it. So if you're talking 1780, pre-French Revolution, for example, or even if you want to go 10 years before that, and pre-American Revolution, a dictator every king was a dictator, and every country had a king. So
right. That's what I meant. That's how I meant.
But then dictator has a new meaning after.
I guess they used a new term because the context was, okay, you had a king, but now let's use a different term because you had the option of a democracy and you're choosing dictatorship. That's
So because a king you can have a just king, and then you can have an unjust king, and that unjust king can be closer to the definition of a dictator in the modern national state. So with the rise of nationalism, the word dictator has its new what we perceive by a dictator has a new meaning. But that's what I'm saying, that the context makes a difference. So the context before, in the age of empires, the context that empires expanded and contracted, and the empire was necessary for people's protection, for people. Otherwise, they were open to any for pirates attacks, right? Like the pirate ship was a major problem in the world till recently. So when Islam expanded, Islam entered the Roman Empire, withdrew. The Roman Empire in North Africa and in the northern Arab region, like in Syria, they were ruling. It was a province. They were basically occupying province. So Islam replaced that province with a different rule, and each one has a different. So we can discuss it. Each one is separately. Like the Syria is separate from the Mesopotamian. That area has also different considerations. Egypt, Northern Africa has a different considerations. More of the, like, Egypt has different considerations than the others. So I would say there was I would say that the expansion into northern Algeria and Libya to the Amazigh and Berber areas, that had more negative context than the expansion to North Egypt and to Syria. Syria were Arab. Ghassasina, the Ghassanites, they were Arabs. They were mostly Christian Arabs, and they say one of the successes of the Islamic expansion into those areas is because the Arabs had, relationships anyway, so they kind of facilitated that. And then, when the Umayyads entered Syria, those same people who were ruling, they became rulers, and Muawiyah, the first Umayyad king or ruler or Khalifa. He had all the Ghassasina in his platform, to the extent that some Muslims, they consider him as, did he convert to Christianity or not? They question his allegiance to Islam, because most of his cabinet were Christians. So there's different way. But let's talk, so we don't go back that far. Let's talk about modern age. So in this tweet, what I'm saying is that we really have to be honest with ourselves when we talk about imperialism. When we have to also, I know that it has been a long time since the expansion into native Indians, but there is ways to show respect for people who have lost their rights, they have lost their lands, at least by honoring some of the agreements that's still in existence, maybe honoring some of the agreements that have been canceled, and it's possible to have.
And the people are still here with us. That's the point too.
100%.
If we talk about 1,400 years ago, those people are not here anymore. Like whoever we're talking, nobody has any memory of any of that. There's fresh wounds, like happening today. People are living today with those issues. Those are the things we should be fixing.
What's wrong is wrong. Doesn't matter how powerful you are and how much time passes. If it was wrong, it's wrong. And if we have values that we want to respect, we have to be honest to these values. The Green Party has a beautiful way of putting all this together. And I am with reparations for slavery and reparations for the tricks that the U.S. government did to dishonor the native agreements previously, which was depicted very beautifully in one of the late movies, right, with DiCaprio and Robert De Niro. I might disagree with the details of reparations, the details of these agreements, but in general, I am with this movement to fix the mistakes of the past, or to at least recognize the mistakes of the past and not to repeat them.
Yes, stop the bleeding and then start repairing old stuff also.
And Israel is the last colonial project. It's kind of a very late colonial project that started too late in a very, very difficult place. And it's a failing project. It's one of the most colonial projects failed through time. Some of them succeeded. Well, this one was one that's set up for failure, and it's failing, and it will fail, and it has no future. And if people don't realize this by now, the peace is not going to take place.
Yeah, and I don't really know what the future would be, like the best scenario type of future. Let's see. Can I want to move on to the next one. I know I had one other good tweet here. Yeah, fantastic sight, beautiful weather, quote. And when I initially read this, I didn't know the context, but then I later saw the context. Who said this was Trump? Very recently, right?
Yes.
In relation to I guess he supposedly helped the ceasefire. And you say here over 250,000 dead, half of which are children. And that is what he has to say, he being Trump, about the ethnically cleansed city of Gaza during one of the worst and longest genocides in history. Welcome to the show of the next 4 years.
Yeah, so, the president was signing executive orders yesterday, and he allowed yesterday or the day before, and he allowed questions from the press that was in the Oval Office. And one asked him about the Gaza. Will the ceasefire continue in Gaza? Will it hold? And he said, I don't think so, but it's not our war. I'm quoting more or less. And then he said, if you look at Gaza and you see it's like a demolition site, well, it has to be rebuilt. He said, they asked him, will you help rebuild it? He said, I might, but it has to be rebuilt differently. And he started talking about Gaza like a real estate project.
Yes, and he's a real estate man.
He started talking about Gaza like a real estate project. Imagine someone talking about Auschwitz as a real estate project or as a hotel project or a resort project. I don't understand Western hypocrisy. They don't even hear themselves. Racism is so much embedded in their DNA, in their some of these people, in their psychic.
When all you see is the propaganda, I guess that's easy.
They don't even hear themselves. Like, all I have to do is just quote what he's saying. And maybe for some people, it doesn't still sound bad.
I actually think somebody like Trump, after saying that, doesn't see what's wrong with it. Maybe somebody has to point it out to him, and then now I won't say that anymore.
You just have to flip things. If you flip things, all you have to do, to be fair, if you don't have the natural capacity of seeing all humans as equal, all you have to do is switch
the golden rule.
Yeah, switch the person with someone who you care about or who you see as a full human. Put
yourself in their shoes and try to imagine how it would be.
Yeah, switch these human animals, like the defense minister of Israel called them. Switch them with what you consider to be humans. I don't know, maybe Scottish people or whoever you think, and then see how it sounds to you. It's drastic. It is really a sickness that is displayed on TV. But when someone has this much power and he's speaking in that way, it's a disaster.
He also, Trump in particular, though, he also talks that way, meaning like dehumanizing, not just of other races, but probably even about women, just in general, so, and probably about poor people. I don't really know. There are rich people who, the way they talk and see non-rich people is they're not even human. As an example of somebody who actually said these words, if you know Ghislaine Maxwell, she was the girlfriend of the other famous guy who had a ring of what's the other famous guy? I can't remember his name. Anyway, disgusting rich people who see poor people as not even human, like animals. I guess they don't even see animals very well. I mean, I think I see my cat and I'm more humane to it than some people are to groups of humans.
Yeah, I've posted before that. Forget about the humans in Gaza. Let's just care about the cats and dogs in Gaza. Can someone, if there were no humans and just cats and dogs, we would be as concerned. Some Western people would be maybe more concerned, just keeping in mind that there are actually cats and dogs being hurt in Gaza.
Well, on a serious point, I mean, that was a serious point too. It made me laugh though. But when I hear people talking about the Israel-Palestine conflict, and I mean from the side of the ones who don't see it as a genocide, the ones that are for more destruction, I always see them insinuating that it's all Muslims, but there's also ex-Muslims. There's also babies, which I would say are not Muslim or Muslim because they're babies. They were born yesterday. There's also Christians, I'm pretty sure. But they don't talk about any of those things. They actually say things that equates everyone over there as Hamas. And that's one issue too, is the morality of Hamas. But Mosab, the guy who's on the Israeli side now, but he was the son of a co-founder of Hamas. He says even the babies are Hamas. And then you have, this is disgusting, Jordan Peterson said, "Give him hell, Netanyahu." And then here's an ex-Muslim YouTuber, Apostate Prophet, said Israel should be harsher.
Yeah, I mean, all of them, for me, all of them are war criminals. If you enable and help war crimes, then you're part of it. You are enabler of war crimes. You are, and it's disgusting. And that's why I consider the White House as a place. It's terrorism headquarters during the Biden administration. I can't judge the Trump administration yet, but I've actually called on everyone in the U.S. government to either try to change or what do you call it? Istaqil. To resign. And also, I called on all Arab Americans to withdraw from the Democratic Party because the Democratic Party is not taking the right stances. And I fought for the Green Party, and we've actually got, in Dearborn, we got almost double the votes for Jill Stein than for Kamala Harris. And it's the first time in history, like there's less than 500 people voted Green Party in 2020 in Dearborn, and over 11,000 in this last election. Wow. So the increase is just tremendous, which shows a totally new direction, because there's definitely the Republicans were totally nuts. There were more Israelis than the most right-wing Israelis. And Democrats basically were enabling genocide, except for a very, very few exceptions, like Rashida Tlaib and a few others, plus Bernie Sanders at a later stage.
Yeah, you mentioned the administration, but isn't it the entire Congress too?
Yeah, the Congress too is responsible, though there's few people. So in the first vote for ceasefire, 100 senators out of 100 senators voted against ceasefire, including Bernie Sanders, by the way. And at that time, I said there's 100 senators who are 100 war criminals today. Because how can you? And I have a whole video about that, by the way. How can you go to sleep at night knowing that your vote is killing children while you're sleeping? How can that happen? Like, this is not. How are they using the same logic that Osama bin Laden uses when attacking civilians in New York City and other places? How can they do the same thing and then expect to be seen as a civilized people and expect to be be judged as differently? So it is tremendous what happened in last year. It has really.
They're all receiving money from AIPAC.
Yeah, of course, and all this dirty money in politics and all this. People have lost their values. They've lost their, and it really reveals a deep, because there are people. Listen, Americans, the Green Party, Dr. Jill Stein is an example, but there are millions of people who have protested in the universities, who have protested in the streets, who have shut down the Grand Terminal Station and the Grand, in New York. They've done tremendous, Code Pink ladies, the Jewish Voices for Peace, Amnesty International, all the Scandinavian countries, the Irish, Ireland, Colombia, Spain, South Africa, the rest of the world, the rest of the world except the United States. And there is a lot of people who have showed their humanity. They've stood against the wrong that's taking place, although they are not directly related like us to this region. Like this is very close home. My grandfather's house was destroyed by Israel in the 1970s, and now in Lebanon, and now in the current war also it was destroyed again. Now my father's house was destroyed again in this war.
People don't recognize that is related to what's happening in Gaza and West Bank.
Yeah, this is something that's happening right now. We have relatives who have Dearborn is so close to us. We are being bombed. Our families are being bombed. But all these people who have stood up and they've protested, and they've really, I stand in honor for them, although they are not directly related. We cannot handle all the world's problems. There have been a genocide that took place in Rwanda. There was a
1995, right?
Yeah, and I haven't protested like I was young at that time, but I didn't protest like I was supposed to. And if I did, that would show really a lot of humanity from me, that I really have prioritized the situation in Rwanda, because it's a human catastrophe. But when people stand with Palestine today, it's a wake-up call for me, really, and for us. And I've said this before, that it's a wake-up call that any injustice, like Martin Luther King says, an injustice everywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. So we cannot let these things go, because they're setting the next word for us. Like Dr. Jill Stein says, how Gaza goes, we go. This is the bar right now, that killing children, killing civilians, that this death ratio is acceptable, that systematic rape in prisons is acceptable. We are in a different world. Who's going to protest now? Who's going to protest if...
I think what you're saying is we don't really need to deal with and fix AIPAC. It's going to get fixed on its own from kind of what's been happening already, which is everyone coming online, everyone getting enlightened. We haven't said it yet, but partly I think it's because of the internet, and we're not relying on the propaganda media anymore.
Yeah, I can't see a world that continues in that way. I cannot see the next generation thinking or acting the way that the older generation is doing today. And statistics are on my side. And the majority of voters in the year 2030 in the United States will be the Generation Z. And this means that the United States will change. Demographically, it will change, and it will cause a political shift. Also, the duopoly, this dual, it's similar to fascism, where two parties, they control the politics. They are aligned with Wall Street, the war machine, and AIPAC. So the differences are outside these three industries. And they make it so hard for anyone else to get on the ballot or to compete with them. You don't understand the difficulty the Green Party goes through to have a presence on the ballot, and they fail in some states. Like New York, for example, they went from requiring 15,000 signatures petition to 45,000 signatures that have to be collected in 6 weeks, and each one of them has to be 100% legitimate. And there are an army of lawyers that the Democrats place to question every signature. So you need to collect 90,000 signatures in order for you to win 45,000 legitimate signatures. And
just to get on the ballot.
Just to get on the ballot, you have to do this in 6 weeks, and no mistake in any of the ballots and any of the applications. They make it so difficult, so expensive in some states, so impossible in some states. And the whole effort of the Green Party is just to be on the ballot. And they run with less than $1 million a year budget, which is 5 minutes for any of the Democratic or 5 minutes of expenditures for the Democrats or the Republicans. So it is almost like fighting fascism. If it wasn't for the Constitution, we would not even exist. But the Constitution, keeps that path open for us. And it's a fight. But the only reason I'm hopeful, otherwise I'll pack my bags and go to Norway or something. Because there are countries out there that are that we are kind of rogue children compared to, like the Scandinavian countries. And United States, in terms of rating, it doesn't even fall in the category of developing world.
Healthcare as an issue is one of them. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the only hope is that the newer generation has this enlightenment. They are the generation of TikTok. They are the generation where they're taking their news directly from each other, from the witnesses, and they are the generation that is reading more widely, is choosing alternative paths to education, and they are traveling and they are mixing, and they have no problem with diversity. And this generation is going to be the majority of voters, and our hope is in it.
What you've been explaining here about the future, your view seems to be more optimistic than mine, and I thought I was very optimistic. I really like what you're saying. Maybe one day we could talk about my less optimistic thoughts one day. Not today, obviously. I think we did a lot today. I want to have you on again for many other different things. So much that was talked about today. I hope you'll be on again, and maybe we'll do it as a live stream so we can stream on both sides.
Sure.
And maybe one day, by the way, if you ever want to talk about a more, well, actually, Muslimish is so I do a live stream with Dr. Usama al-Binni. We do it weekly, and we're kind of still new to this. Right now, we're just helping people de-indoctrinate themselves. The first 5 episodes, we were talking about the future of Islam. We talked about things like reform, and mainly we were trying to help. We're trying to help people before and after leaving Islam, and we're trying to help the outside world understand us. So one day, if there's a topic that you really care about, or if I figure out a topic that would be great for you, and mix it in there, and you can come on it's Thursdays at 2 p.m. Central. So that's 3 p.m. your time, I think. If you're available that kind of time.
I usually am working during that time. I finish work at about 5 p.m.
Okay.
Yeah.
So then maybe just this podcast, or maybe a pre-recording that I end up playing on the live stream, something like that.
And greetings to Osama. Osama is a friend, and he's also in the Muslimish group. So
yes. I know. Yeah, he's the one who told me about you guys. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, I would like to help your project, Muslimish, and then also Ex-Muslims International. And I would like some help with my project, which is really the same. Like, I see it as the kind of same. The flag in my project is, let's get rid of the apostasy laws around the world, which means you have to deal with blasphemy laws too.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like you said you guys are working on that too. So I'd like to have a dedicated podcast on that.
Yeah, for sure. We definitely overlap in a lot of our goals and purposes. And a salute to you and all that you do. I mean, today is really it's all these soldiers like you who are fighting to advance human rights and to advance freedom of expression. So I appreciate it a lot, and anything that we can do to help, we'll do stream lives, and we will do it. We can have it in cooperation with several organizations, so we get the widest reach that we can. I'm also involved, by the way, in Islamic projects. So I'm involved in secular projects. I'm also involved in Islamic projects, whether it is Islamic identity projects that sees Islam as a political identity, or as a reform Islamic movement that tries to reform and renew Islamic thought. And
You're a busy man.
Well, we divide and conquer.
And I guess you can't even count how many organizations you're dealing with.
Yeah, this is, I don't consider myself that I've accomplished anything very special, but a little movement and different paths, just to play your role in advancing everything one step forward at least.
Well, I hope to do more things like you're doing, or be more like you. You're a mentor now for me. I'm gonna read your book. I'm gonna learn more about what you're working on, and hopefully,
Thank you, Rami. Thank you. I appreciate that, and we will be working together. And thank you for this podcast.
Cool. Thank you so much.
We'll see you again.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.